Police say Tyler Robinson was up on that rooftop in the distance right there. He was caught on video on the roof, but despite the video evidence and everything else that you listed off, there are still so many people who don't think he's the one who did it.
He was actually just talking about mass shootings too, which is crazy. And as soon as he got done answering the question, we heard a loud pop.
Shots have been fired. There's gunshots. Run, run, run.
Students began fleeing the outdoor amphitheater. Kirk had been shot in the neck.
Authorities took this man, 22-year-old Tyler Robinson, into custody late Thursday. Sources tell CBS News Robinson's father saw the photos released by authorities and confronted his son. The father then reached out to a youth pastor close with the family who contacted the U.S. Marshals.
Attorneys representing Tyler Robinson, the man accused of killing Charlie Kirk, are requesting he be allowed to wear street clothes in future court hearings, including pretrial hearings.
Jeb was a volunteer at the event. He was part of Turning Point USA.
He meant an inspiration to me. I got nightmares in my head, I fear. Thoughts build up until I can't feel. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science. Someone once said internet fury is not real life. Do you want to know which someone said that? Charlie Kirk. Kirk said internet fury is not real life. But I think it was for the shooter. I think the shooter somehow lost track of real life and real consequences. I suspect he percolated online, he stewed online until internet fury bubbled over into real life, bubbled over online into offline reality. And that can happen to us. How can that happen to us?
Your focus determines your reality.
Your focus can be a good thing if, say, you're training for the Olympics and a particular type of focus is necessary to get you where you want to go. So if your focus is based on something affirmative, something worthwhile, something meaningful, then that focus is good. On the other hand, if your focus is on something that is not affirmative, something that's antisocial, something that's not true, something that's not good, well, then that focus is going to take you to a not very good place. So your focus can also be the worst possible thing if you can't help yourself, if you keep stumbling down paths of least resistance. I mean, imagine any addiction, someone addicted to drugs that is so focused on getting them that nothing will get in their way. Well, that's not a very good kind of focus, right? And so I think we do need to be somewhat introspective here. What are we focusing on? You know, is that what you or I are doing, stumbling down paths of least resistance?
And to complicate things further, you can't just eat food anymore. You have to snap a picture and then share it with your friends.
But before we get to the rest of this analysis, if you're finding this video worthwhile and you haven't subscribed, and I see only 32.1% of viewers are subscribed, please make sure whether you are or not. If you haven't subscribed, please do. Kudos to Stephanie G for your super thanks. Thanks very much for that. If you haven't hit the thanks button, please do. I've actually just come across a TikTok channel that has literally copied the last 8 of my videos, so it can be sometimes a little bit tough trying to make an authentic living in social media and on YouTube. So if you haven't ever hit the thanks button, please consider doing so, and let's get started.
How would you want to be remembered? I want to be remembered for courage for my faith.
How do you want to be remembered? Have you ever thought about that? If the shooter was Tyler Robinson, and if Robinson's issue with Kirk was that he was spreading hate, and if he experienced that hate as internet fury, as his reality, well then Robinson's response to shoot someone he felt was hateful was a particularly incoherent response. According to the New Yorker, whatever radicalization Robinson may have undergone online, people in his offline life seem to have failed to fully understand what was happening to him, including the person closest to him. And I mean, one way of interpreting what he did was what is known as a shitpost, a nihilistic in-joke translated horribly into real-world action. If that's the case, we're dealing with an already senseless act that becomes an utterly meaningless one. Robinson's gruesome joke carried out for the benefit of the online audience that he was, on some level, performing for. One does wonder if this was to some extent something that he did to impress somebody else, to sort of feel favor and to win the approval of those around him, or was it just a lot more deeply personal? I think online reality has become so powerful, so mainstream, it's shaping not only who we are, but also what our societies are becoming. Political campaigns now are more effective online, crafted and circulated on social media than anywhere else. Sound bites have started shaping public opinion today. The New Yorker describes Charlie Kirk as not simply practicing democratic politics, he was a slick and professional counterpart to the online troll. One interpretation is that he traded in sound bites, which went viral, and repeated ad nauseum. These can actually shape today's public opinion. Content creators understand how the content mill works. They're conscious of it, and some are brazen exploiters of it. But do you understand how it works? Or to put it more clearly, how it's working you or working on you? And I think it's important that we do. You know, we often talk about understanding criminal psychology. We can learn some lessons out of the mistakes that criminals make and the roads that they go down. But we can also learn something about online radicalization. We may not be radicalized in a criminal sense, but our psychologies may be being formed in certain ways that I think we also need to try to understand. According to the New Yorker, the horror of Kirk's murder will serve the demands of the content mill, stoking more outraged engagement among his pre-existing fan base. So what we are seeing is a perpetuated cycle of online radicalization, and if it continues unbroken, there are going to be harrowing consequences. I've actually looked at my stats, and it shows me other channels that are kind of related to mine and the content people are watching there, and I must say I'm appalled to see what is there. Very popular right now is footage showing Charlie Kirk's security team trying to implicate them. And another one is trying to show that he died from not a bullet wound but something else. And another conspiracy theory is that there were trapdoors and tunnels underneath the area where Charlie Kirk was killed. Fiction can be fun, right? But instead of getting into the nuts and bolts of all of this, instead of walking between the trees and talking about all of these theories, what about the woods? What about a global view of what is really going on when people get caught up in all of this? And I think we can derive an equation which forms a kind of feedback loop. And it looks like this: outrage, engagement, online radicalization, harrowing consequences. And that then loops around to repeat itself. But now, because social media is so ubiquitous, so universal, it's not just you who is experiencing outrage, engagement, online radicalization, harrowing consequences. It's all of this at scale. It's not just you, it's someone else and someone else besides that someone else, on, and it's going on simultaneously, night and day, 24/7, constantly, all around the world. Outrage, engagement, online radicalization, harrowing consequences. Outrage, engagement, online radicalization, harrowing consequences. And what is going on is some people are being outraged a lot more than you are. They're engaging a lot more than you are. They're being radicalized online a lot more than you are. And this is leading to harrowing consequences a lot worse than in a way we can imagine. It's rolling like waves, and eventually giant waves, around the world all the time. You know, even the isolated incident of Charlie Kirk being assassinated likely led to some, perhaps many, feeling radicalized. I'm just saying, just him being shot has led to some people being or feeling radicalized. So here's a single instance: Charlie Kirk outrage leads to online radicalization. Look at these headlines: right-wing anger surges. The US is at a dangerous crossroads. And then this one: when algorithms amplify divisions. And so I do think we can add another aspect there: outrage, engagement, affirmation. where you're engaging in this outrage, you're being affirmed by other people who are outraged, which amplifies it. Online radicalization, harrowing consequences. Now, according to the LA Times, the killing of conservative activist Charlie Kirk set off 3 days of some of the ugliest and most divisive social media reactions America has ever seen, leading Utah's governor on Friday to declare that enough is enough. My initial reaction to the assassination, besides shock and horror, was that it was too polarizing, too toxic, and too divisive to even cover. But then I started to see something else in these tragic events. Back to the LA Times. Kirk's words immediately struck a chord in a nation where many have been stunned by the level of online anger since the killing. Kirk was shot by a sniper at a Utah university, and graphic video of the slaying immediately spread around social media platforms, heightening emotions. You know, if the default setting of a lot of creators was to basically feed this outrage, I felt that what I wanted to do was provide cogency, provide a sort of feet on the ground analysis, which is something that, if you look around, is actually quite rare. Almost everyone is trying to stoke this outrage. What I'm trying to do is literally just bring us back into reality and just simply deal with the facts. It's not lucrative, but it certainly is important. It's clear that on some level the assassination struck a chord with someone, and it has been fascinating and often deeply terrifying to see how many different people have simply looked at this story and made these events into their own image. And I see this a lot in true crime. A good example is the John Benet Ramsey case. People don't see that case in its own terms. They see it through their own father figure, their own mother figure, their own sibling, their own family dynamics. They don't see it actually in terms of its own reality. And this does seem to be the pernicious legacy of a customized algorithm, is it feeds actually into a narcissistic way of seeing everything through the lens of our own selfishness, our own selves. And that selfishness is being programmed into us to get even worse, to get even more selfish. And so that makes us worse and worse at seeing actually what reality is. And this is the result of our online devotion, that offline we simply reveal our own programming. We don't reveal reality, but instead how we choose to interpret it. And it's in that area that I think there are valuable lessons to learn. I think the best way to understand what is happening to us is to start with Kirk and Robinson, spend a little bit of time looking at them, and then challenge ourselves in terms of our ability to authentically figure out what happened to them. And that, in a way, is a route to figuring out what is happening to us as individuals and as a society and as a world. And I think in the most basic way, what we saw here was one individual waging a war with words while another responded with bullets. I've heard people say that words aren't violence, that only violence is violence. But if that were true, no one would have felt it necessary to fire people over their words in response to this. Now let's dig deeper into how this process of radicalization works, how divisions were amplified, and also the lessons we learned from Charlie Kirk's death. And I think we'll deal with that in the next analysis as basically a part 2 to this, the lessons we learn from Charlie Kirk's death. So I'm not going to take it further than that. Please do look out for my next review of the Murder series on Hulu. It is actually quite interesting to revisit. I've also posted a video already on that. That's part 1 in terms of my series reviewing the Murder, A Death in the Family. Check that out this weekend if you haven't already. Thank you for listening. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you guys next time.